Take charge of your thoughts. Take charge of your life.
Psychologist, author, speaker, musician, former professor, and the host of Love and Life, Dr. Karen Anderson-Averill.
Welcome to Love and Life. I'm Dr. Karen Anderson-Averill. So, here we are in the midst of a global pandemic. That's something I never thought I would say on this podcast, and yet it is our new reality that has absolutely shaken us all to our core. We all feel the same feelings. We feel helpless. We feel confused. We're scared. We're anxious. We don't know what's going on. And as human beings, psych research shows us that we desire control. And when we're not in control, we suffer psychologically. We feel more depressed. We feel more anxious. And of course, much of life really isn't in our control. And we manage that on a daily basis. We control what we can. We take charge of our thoughts. We take charge of the aspects of our lives that we can. And we manage the rest as best we can. But here we are on a global scale, feeling utterly out of control in pretty much every aspect because we are facing health risks. We are facing economic risks. Our social connectedness has been ripped away from us, at least in face-to-face interactions, because we're all social distancing and feeling isolated. This is enormous, and no one knows what to do. No one has the answers because this is utterly unprecedented. So my heart is breaking for all of us, every single one of us. And I love you all so much. So I've been praying and thinking about what I can do in the midst of all this, which is what I know you're doing, right? Because we can focus on the fear. We can focus on the helplessness. We can focus on all the parts of this that are terrifying, or we can focus on what we actually can do. So if you're following me on Instagram, you know that I've been doing Insta Lives. We did 2 girls' nights in with podcast guest Leslie Kaz, who you've heard on the program before. We did these Insta Lives because we know some of you are living alone. And now they're telling you don't go out of your apartment. And that's isolating. So I decided to do these girls' nights in so that we could approximate getting together, having some girl talk, and using social media for good to remain connected, to remain in community throughout this crisis. My goal is to do an Insta Live at least every other day with other people in this space who are here to encourage and empower you, whether it's therapists, coaches, authors, anyone who has a word of hope for us, because I don't have all the answers, but I do have hope. In addition to Insta Lives, I'll be posting bonus podcast episodes designed to help us manage our anxiety and our fears during this time. I want everything I have, every resource I have available to me to be directed toward encouraging and empowering you throughout this pandemic, because again, this is something none of us know how to handle. But we can look to the research, we can look to the therapeutic techniques, and look to the coaching strategies that work in other domains, because no, none of us has ever been through a global pandemic before. But fear is fear. Anxiety is anxiety. Depression is depression. Loneliness is loneliness. And we do know how to tackle those problems. We're going to take the tools that have worked before, apply them to now, and we're going to thrive, not just survive. We're going to thrive. So stay tuned. Stick with me. I see you. I love you. And I am here for you. So, as I mentioned, I have a ton of new content coming your way very soon, but I also want to refer you to the podcast episodes I already have in place that are available to you right now. So let's take a look at some of the themes I've covered in the past. Episode 77, Take Charge of Your Negative Thoughts, Part 1, Techniques from ACT. And this is with my friend and my former student and psychotherapist, Kate Lambie. And we talk about how to take charge of our negative thinking, which there's plenty of opportunity to have negative thoughts trying to course through your mind right now during a pandemic. So let me refer you to that. It's episode 77, and I know it will be helpful for you. In episode 66, psychotherapist Allison Sepanero joined me to talk about looking for love while living with anxiety. You may know Allison from the Biological Clock episode. She is a therapist who focuses on CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which you know is my jam. Allison is the anxiety healer on Instagram with, I think, upwards of 90,000 followers. She has so much compassion, a huge heart for anxiety. And yeah, this episode we focused about looking for love and dating, but all the strategies she talks about generalized to the current times. As I mentioned, when we're dealing with anxiety, whether it's anxiety about dating or anxiety about a global pandemic, the strategies actually generalize. So check out that episode. I was so honored in episode 65 to interview Dr. Stephen C. Hayes, the creator of ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, which you know I absolutely adore as a third-generation cognitive therapy. The episode is called Liberate Your Mind to Address Depression and Anxiety. Dr. Hayes talked about his new book, A Liberated Mind, How to Pivot Toward What Matters. It's a powerful resource, so if you have more time to read, that's another recommendation I have for you. Episode 57, Take Charge of Social Anxiety, an interview with Ellen Hendrickson, PhD. Now, you may be saying, Karen, I'm isolated in my apartment. I can't have social anxiety. It's kind of impossible right now. But again, the strategies that Dr. Hendrickson talks about in terms of social anxiety will absolutely help you and prove powerful to tackle pandemic anxiety. In episode 52, called Neuroplasticity is Your Superpower, I talk about the realities of maintaining positive thinking, not just to be Susie Sunshine, but because when we think in a positive manner, it literally rewires our brain such that it becomes easier and easier to think positively, and negative thinking becomes harder and harder on a neurological level. So check that one out. And I recommend in this time, we have to be very mindful of what we're consuming. Be sure that you are not fueling the hysteria that can easily set into your mindset by watching too much TV, following every random Twitter person who doesn't know what they're talking about anyway. So make sure that you are inundating yourself with positive messages. Look for the helpers. I love that idea. I think it's from Mr. Rogers. He said when he was little and he would be upset about some tragedy, his mom would say, look for the helpers. There are helpers out there. Focus on them. Who do you need to turn to for positive messaging? I talk about it in the episode, and I'll share now. For me, my go-to positive messaging man is Joel Osteen. I've read several of his books. I've listened to countless messages. When I was getting over the worst breakup of my entire life, I truly credit Joel and his word of hope and encouragement as one of the main factors that got me through that. We are in days and dark times where many of us don't feel we have what it takes to remain hopeful. So we need to look to those who've been given the gift of being able to remain hopeful and positive in the midst of scary, scary times. Episode 45 is called Move Your Body, Mend Your Mind. It's an interview with British psychotherapist William Pollan. William himself suffers from anxiety and depression, and he uses running to help him get into a positive place. You don't have to be a runner, though, to appreciate his DRT, dynamic running therapy. It's really about just moving. It can be walking. And in these days, it's going to be walking on the treadmill or walking up and down the stairs or marching in place, whatever you're doing to keep your body moving. Also, take advantage of William's app. It's free and it's full of all kinds of resources. There's meditations, there are grounding exercises, there are places for you to journal while you're walking or running. It's called DRT, again, dynamic running therapy. But like I said, I'm not a runner. You don't have to be a runner. It's more about a way of taking our body and using our body as part of our healing process when it comes to our mind. William has a TED Talk called Movement is Medicine, so check that out as well. And finally, way back in episode 26, it's called Blue Christmas, 2 research-based hacks for beating the holiday blahs. And yeah, it was focused on Christmas time, but again, what works for beating the holiday blahs can also beat the social distancing blahs. So check that one out. I think it will be helpful for you as well. We're in this together. And social media, technology, which so often get a bad rap. And, I've talked about it on this program. So often these ways of communicating are laden with all kinds of problems, with social comparison and things that don't uplift us. But in this time of social distancing and forced isolation, let's use technology, social media to connect and maintain as much normalcy as we can in this very new normal. The Love and Life hack for this week is be proactive. By doing so, we can combat those feelings of helplessness and lack of control that I talked about at the beginning of the program. Please take a listen to these episodes I've shared today because the experts, psychologists, therapists have given their heart and soul to help us all manage these extremely stressful, chaotic times. Don't just sit there and stew. Don't just sit there and ruminate and freak yourself out. Be proactive. Listen to these resources. They're effective and you will feel better. Take charge of your thoughts. Take charge of your life, even in the midst of a pandemic. Stay tuned to my Instagram because those additional podcast episodes will be posting this week. And I have a couple other ideas up my sleeve that are going to be super empowering and supportive for all of us. And until next time, make it a great week.
Love and Life is produced by Tim May and host and executive producer, Dr. Karen Anderson-Averill.